Welcome to Lawyer Like an Athlete podcast.
Hey everyone, welcome back to an all-new episode of Lawyer Like an Athlete podcast with Dr. Amy Wood. I am your host, Mike Leon. Amy here is a psychologist, an executive coach, an author who's been helping attorneys perform at a high level without sacrificing their health, relationships, or even their sanity. In today's episode, we're talking about why so many smart, driven attorneys get stuck when they try to change and why breaking goals down is often the missing piece. Amy, it's so good to see you. You know, attorneys, I'm sure they come to you. They say they want a little less stress. I don't know how that's possible. Well, you're going to explain that. Less stress, more time, better balance. In your experience, though, what has tended to derail those goals before they actually change anything?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me on today, Mike. It's always good to see you. The thing to remember about attorneys, they're pretty ambitious, and ambitious people have ambitious goals, and the goals are usually great. So as an example, attorneys always come to me because they want to work on their goals in coaching, and they're not sure how to get things done that are important to them. And they often come in with great goals, such as, I really want to make partner. I just became an associate. I want to be on the partner track. Or it could be something like, I really just want to have better relationships in my life, and I don't have time. Or I want to get in better shape. Or it could be, I want a better job. I don't like the job where I'm at. But then they tell me, but I don't know where to start. I'm really anxious about this because I just don't know how to do it. And the problem usually is it's not the goal. Again, the goals are great. It's how they're accomplishing or expecting to accomplish that goal. They don't have a strategy. And when you don't have a strategy and you expect you're going to accomplish a goal in just one big step, you just stay stuck.
So, Amy, let me ask you then, when improvement is treated as something that should happen quickly or even on demand for them, what usually tends to go wrong?
Well, I love what you just said. You said on demand, and this is part of the problem. We live in an on-demand world. So we expect, let's look at Amazon, pretty much anything you want to order, it's on demand. It comes to your house after you click the order. It comes to your house within a week usually. And we have become so accustomed to just being able to say, this is what I want, and I want a quick fix, and it better happen soon, that we expect our goals to be like that too. So that's part of the problem. The other issue that attorneys have when it comes to setting goals is, again, they're really ambitious. And they've gotten where they are because they're really, really smart, and they're really good at looking at a plan and saying, oh, I can work this plan. So think about a syllabus. When you're in college or when you're in law school, it's laid out in front of you, or when you're studying for the bar exam, you've got the study materials and okay, I've got this much time. I've got to get through these steps, check things off, and I can do it. I can get a really high grade and get to the next step. And once you get out of law school, and you've passed the bar and you're at a firm, all of that goes right out the window because no one's giving you a syllabus. No one is telling you, here are the steps on this paper, and you're going to be able to accomplish these steps and get what you want. And so they don't know what to do. They don't have a guidebook. They don't have a blueprint, and they're not accustomed to that because most attorneys are very good academically, and then they get into the world of work, and where's the plan?
Right. Well, you mentioned steps, but Amy, I'm sure a lot of times people skip steps, right? And that maybe there's some efficiency or it rarely works. What have you seen in your experience on the emotional reaction fronts that tend to kind of surface when people they make these quantum leaps instead of moving in order like normal steps?
Well, it creates a lot of anxiety. And I'm going to give you an example from my personal life. My husband and I love to hike. And so sometimes we'll start off a hike and we know it's going to be a great day, but then we get to the foot of this mountain we're going to hike. And let's say this is like a 10-hour hike because we're pretty ambitious with that. And sometimes I'll look up at the top of the mountain and I'll think, oh my gosh, I can't get up there. This is really going to be hard. And I start to get anxious. But then when I actually just say, okay, I'm not going to look at the top. I'm just going to start taking steps, tiny little steps. Then I get immersed in the hike and start enjoying the experience. And eventually I do get to the top. So the problem comes in when you're looking at that whole goal and you're not breaking it down and you're stuck because you're anxious and you're paralyzing yourself with that anxiety. And then you start to think, I'll never get out of this situation. What am I going to do?
Amy, You fed into the follow-up beautifully because in that example, right, large goal, but let's achieve these small steps. You mentioned these lawyers are so ambitious that sometimes they reach the small steps and it's unsatisfying for them, or sometimes they feel like it's pointless. Why have you seen that reaction come up?
Well, I think again, let's start with the cultural context we live in. We live in a world where we're not impressed by tiny steps. What impresses us is hearing about big leaps and huge accomplishments. And because attorneys love to accomplish and they're used to getting rewarded big and making a big splash, when it comes to small steps, it's kind of like, well, what's the point? If I'm just going to take that tiny little step, I might as well just stay where I am because I'm not going to get anywhere. They don't understand that that small step is going to get them going. And that's where the momentum comes in. That's where the motivation comes in. That's where their mind starts getting out of that anxious place and they start to see real possibility.
I'm sure there's a psychological part to it as well too. Like what's happening psychologically in their mind if the steps feel sometimes too big for them to get to.
Well, the thing that's going on in the mind of anyone who's trying to take too big a step is that the brain really doesn't like change. Change is looked at as scary for the brain. It's looked at as too much work. So the brain really wants you to stay right where you are. So when the brain perceives that you're about to make any kind of big step, the brain will try to shut you right down by kicking up anxiety and self doubt, and it keeps you where the brain wants you, where the brain doesn't have to do all that extra work. So, what you want to do, and this is really the trick, is you want to take a small step that is so small, it's so ridiculously doable and laughably easy that the brain isn't going to notice. The brain isn't going to go into that fight flight kind of mode that you see yourself in when you're scared, because a change is a threat to the brain. So when you take that tiny step and the brain's not waking up, it's not there to stop you. It's not there to cause all that anxiety. And then you're able to get through it and say, wow, I took that little step and I'm fine. And I haven't gone very far, but I actually made some movement. So now what's my next little step and my next little step? So yeah, you don't want to intimidate the brain by doing too much, in one big step at one time.
Right. Amy, can I ask you, and I've seen this not only in my personal life, not to bring that over here, but I see sometimes a lot of people's, they get the goals, but the goals are kind of assigned by the pressure that they're getting from family, outside expectations, or even the law firm that they're working at. What have you seen tends to happen when the motivation that's driving them isn't genuinely personal?
When you're not being driven by genuine motivation, meaning it really is meaningful to you and it's something that you really want to accomplish, it's harder to move forward because in order to accomplish a goal, let's say the goal has to do with changing a habit, for example. When you're trying to change a habit, it takes every bit of energy you have because you're developing a whole new way of doing something. And so, unless you're totally 100% into that, it's going to be really hard to maintain that determination and that focus. And something interesting, when I started out as a psychologist, almost 30 years ago, we thought that it took about 40 days to develop a habit, because habit building is hard. As I've said, you get distracted, you need to put all your energy into something, you fall off track, get back on, trial and error, experimentation, all of that. Now it takes almost a year, okay, to develop a new habit. And the reason for that is because there's so many more distractions today. There's so many more demands trying to take us off track. And so you've got to know how to focus. You've got to have a lot of skills for getting past distractions. And it's so hard today to accomplish habit change and to stay on track that more than ever, it needs to be coming from within. It can't be somebody else's goal. Even if you think you've convinced yourself, like a lot of people do this, they'll say, I want to give up smoking, or I want to give up drinking, or I want to give up eating junk food, but they're doing it because they're trying to please their doctor, or they're trying to please their wife or their husband or their family members, or they just think it's a good idea, but they're not invested. They don't really want to give up the cigarettes or the drinking or the junk food. And so it may last for a little while, but because they're not totally 100% intrinsically buying into that goal, at some point they're going to give it up.
Folks, please give up the cigarettes. But that's a Mike Leon PSA. But all right.
Yeah.
But Amy, let me ask you. I want to go back to something you said before, and I would love for you to hammer kind of the point home to people about that we pass over the small rewards. What would you impart to people listening of why the small rewards play such an important role in sustaining the change that you want?
Yes. Just like we like to make big splashes and big leaps with our goal setting and goal accomplishment, we also want big rewards. We also want to celebrate at the end, when we accomplish what we thought wasn't possible. And that's great. We should celebrate at the end of something big that we've accomplished. It's also important, though, to motivate yourself along the way to keep that momentum going, because goal accomplishment is tough, by having rewards as you incrementally make progress. So think about it like when you're trying to train a dog to do tricks. You give the dog a treat every time they move in the direction of learning the trick. Good boy or good girl. You have to do the same with yourself so that you're not looking so far ahead. Like imagine if you started law school and you were going to reward yourself upon graduation. You wouldn't get very far. You wouldn't be able to sustain your focus and determination and your grit that you need to get through it. So you might say instead, when I accomplish getting through that first week of law school and do all my homework, I'm going to take myself out for an ice cream cone, or I'm going to have coffee with a friend. It doesn't have to be something huge, but it's got to be something where you're treating yourself and it's something that you're looking forward to. So you're keeping on track. It's like if you're working out, and okay, after this hour workout, I know how great it's going to feel. I'm going to do this for an hour, and then I'm going to have some water, and I'm going to relax, and I'm going to feel like $1,000,000. That's your reward. But if you said to yourself, I'm going to work out for an entire day, and at the end of it, I'll feel good, you wouldn't be able to sustain that because it's just too much that you're asking of yourself.
I mean, this is Lawyer Like an Athlete podcast, Amy. And, if you're down 5-0, you can't hit a 5-run home run. You've got to
Right.
get somebody on base and you've got to matriculate it. So let me
That's
ask
right.
you, someone that's listening to this right now and they feel a little stuck between, like we talked about, wanting to change, but also feeling potentially overwhelmed by it. What's a place you would recommend for them to start before they try to fix everything all at once?
Yeah, I would say just figure out what that really tiny little ridiculously small laughable step is that you can take. And so it might be that you just say, let's say you are thinking about exploring another job and looking for another job. So maybe you say, what, I'm just going to, sometime this week, I'm going to chat with a friend of mine who recently did just what I'm thinking about doing, and just see if they have any thoughts. Or, maybe I'm just going to go online tonight and search for a good book on the topic, because that seems more doable than, I'm going to find a new job.
Yeah, it's great advice. Amy, one more thing before we go. Where can people find your book at?
They can find my book in two places. One place they can find it is it's published by the AP or ABA, American Bar Association. And you can find my book at shopaba.org, or you can also find it, speaking of that quick fix, quick delivery concept, how everything is on demand, you can also get it on Amazon.
There you go. See, you can always it always comes back to
Yeah,
the on demand.
yeah,
Amy, thank you so much for the time and the insights. I appreciate it.
yeah. Thank you so much.
That's it for today's episode of Lawyer Like an Athlete podcast. If you want to learn more, you want to connect with Dr. Amy Wood, you want to go check out the book, visit amywoodpsyd.com. Thanks again for listening. Before you go, hit like, hit subscribe, leave a review, comment, share the episode with that lawyer who's maybe a little bit stressed right now. As always, I'm Mike Leon. See everybody next time.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.